or 2.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Opinionated Horsewoman here. I have got Megan with Lindinhof on, and tonight we're here. We made it. It's storming. We are both experiencing some lovely storms. I had my power and everything go out. How did you do?
I did great. No loss of power.
Oh yeah, it was a bit of a Wild West here, but
I did get wet.
Yep. Yeah, you got a little wet. So yeah, it's been a week of storms. Tuesday were some pretty strong storms as well. So good times.
Yeah.
Mother Nature at her best. So anyway, tonight we thought we would talk about the idea of the working student and the working student lifestyle, and all that, wherever we go with that, right?
That's right. Let's do it.
So, I mean, gosh, 30 some years ago, I was working, I don't even remember, almost 30 years ago when I was this big, I was a working student, but definitely not in the concept that I think most would consider it. So I will defer to asking the questions and letting you answer, because the way I did it was, I wasn't living there, and it was, I don't know, it was a totally different thing. But so it's pretty, I think it's pretty industry wide. And I mean industry as far as like the whole equestrian world. I don't think there's any disciplines that probably don't have occasionally working students. And I think it obviously depends on the situation, but because I know in the show jumping world and in the hunter world, all that, there are working students. I can't speak to, the industries I'm not as familiar with, like the Western world, the reining world, the saddlebred world, the Arabian world. But, I've definitely, hey, big shout out. Thank you so much, Connor. Big shout out to Connor, our buddy Connor JC. He is over in the UK. Check out his channel. His channel is freaking awesome. We love Connor. He is just like the best guy ever. So I'm going to leave this up here. Check out Connor's channel. And actually, before we get into it, Megan, should go through some quick housekeeping. First of all, we're still having storms where I am. How about you?
I am too.
So there is the potential either one of us could either lose our internet or our power or both. So we will apologize in advance if we just poof, disappear, and it ends in the middle of somebody talking. That will be unfortunate, but hopefully that won't happen. And second of all, appreciate you guys here. Can you give the live stream a thumbs up? We have obviously a live chat available, and I will mention that Megan and I are not on via YouTube. We are on via StreamYard, which is right above Megan's head. It says powered by StreamYard right there. Yep. So just so you all know, hey Connor,
hey
darling, love you, buddy. Thank you so much for supporting. But just so you guys know, because we're on StreamYard, we see the live chat. I feel like it's probably 20 to 45 seconds delayed from YouTube. So apologize if we don't see it right away. It's just a bit of it's that whole technological delay. But as always, we say, please feel free to ask questions via the live chat. We will attempt to get those up on the live and see if Megan can answer them, talk about them, etc. And of course, as Connor very, very kindly and lovely Connor showed, you can support the channel. There's a super chat and super stickers. Connor sent us through a super sticker, a super cute super sticker. So thank you, Connor. Appreciate that so much. So definitely have to say shout out to Connor and his channel. Check out Connor JC on YouTube, please.
Yay!
Make sure you watch a bunch of his videos, subscribe to his channel, comment. He is one of my coolest friends in the UK. I have to say he's pretty fun. I really enjoy his videos. So love you to death, Connor. You are amazing. But yeah, so if you definitely give this a thumbs up. If you got questions, please feel free to ask them in the live chat. We will do our best to do as I'm showing you here with Connor's comment and flash them on the screen. So Again, apologies if we suddenly disappear. We are both experiencing some pretty foul weather right now, and I have lost power already once about an hour ago. So Megan's been a little more fortunate than I was, but my fingers are crossed that we will only have the rain and that nothing will be any worse than that. So back to our discussion. So the working student lifestyle, and you have you've experienced it from both sides. You grew up as a teenager, you were a working student, then as a college girl, you were a working student, and now you are a professional with your own very successful training barn, and you are able to offer working student positions at your barn. So you have seen it full compass. You've experienced it as a working student, and now you're experiencing it as the professional who is teaching someone under her wings. So you definitely can answer a lot of questions.
Let's do it.
So let's talk about it. How old were you when you experienced your first working student position? And we'll go from there.
I was 15. I went out to California and worked with Hilda Gurney in Moore Park, California. And there were, I think, 4 other working students. And I have to say, it was a blast. What I remember the most were actually working with the people and like as a team, working all the horses together and cleaning all the tack and staying up late for full night. It was truly a blast. I am so grateful for that opportunity. I'm still friends with those working students. So yeah, it's fun to stay in touch and then also to see them as professionals.
Absolutely, absolutely. So did they all turn professional, or did some decide not to?
2 out of the 5. No, I'm 3. So 3 of us out of the 5 are professionals, and then the other 2, one is totally out of horses, and then the other I think has a horse but is out of the industry.
Is more of an amateur and pleasure
Yep.
rider, whatever, something. Okay.
Yep.
Understandable. So you were 15, and obviously you were school age. So was that a summer gig? Did you take some time off of school? Did you transfer schools? How did that work?
I took the summer off, and I also took the spring off. And I wanted to move to California and go to school there. Unfortunately, my mother wouldn't let me. So I think it was like 3 months actually over the summer. And I actually had to pay, or my parents paid to be a working student. And also, I lived with the head working student, or you could call her the barn manager, and she actually lived with her grandparents. So I got to stay with her, and she drove me to the barn every morning. And Hilda's was a unique situation because we got to ride multiple horses. I think most of the time you have to bring your own horse. At my second working student gig, it was Temple Farms. And I brought my own horse with me. And I did get to ride some of the stallions. I was fortunate, but they had asked not to plan on that. So that's why I brought my horse. So, but I think Hilda's was a great opportunity to ride many horses.
How big was her when you were there? Her training facility. How many horses were in training with her? Approximately.
Honestly, I don't know. It's been so many years, but my guess would be around 60. But I'm not. I mean, everything seems big when you're that young. But there were, multiple horses outside. There were the young stock, and then there were a lot of horses in training and clients.
We should mention, for those who aren't familiar with Hilda, and most everybody who is watching this who would be a dressage person would know who Hilda is, but she is not only a Grand Prix dressage rider and trainer, she rode in the Olympics, but she also has had for decades a successful breeding program. So not only was she training students and horses, but she also ran a breeding program and was bringing up young stock, and still continues to some extent today. So Hello, big shout out to our friend Heather.
Hey,
Hey,
Heather.
Heather. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. So yeah, we should mention that, I would imagine Hilda's was quite large because, it was very full faceted. She not only was, riding and competing, teaching people, her students, training horses, but they were also, running a full breeding program, which,
Which
is
was
all
fantastic
judge.
because I got to see the breeding aspect. We got to start horses. There were also school horses, clients' horses. We lunged each other on horses. If any of us were sitting down, you could hear Hilda's voice on the loudspeaker. I wanted to sit next to her and watch some of the lessons. And as soon as I came by the hut, it was like, nope, go get on this horse, go get on that horse. And then we also were able to take young horses to inspections. So we got the whole gamut. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and I would imagine long hours. Was this, was this an 8-hour day, a 12-hour day, or a 14-hour day, or did it really vary depending on what's going on?
I think it varied, but most days were 12 hours. And honestly, I didn't even notice. We weren't like the kids that are the kids today. We went to the barn. I was so excited to get in the car with Amanda, and we drive there at like 6 in the morning. We didn't leave until the day was done, which was probably around 6. And I loved, like I said, I loved every minute of it. So I didn't really notice, but
yeah, and as a teenager, I mean, I remember at that age, I would have spent 18 hours in a barn if my parents
yeah,
would let me, or more.
yeah.
I probably would have slept in the barn. I don't think they would have appreciated that. Uh, Getting a little
And we did.
my favorite, hand lotion here. So sorry about that. Yeah,
No
I
problem.
would at that age, I think I would have lived in a barn and been extremely happy.
Yeah, and we slept in the stall for foaling, full watch. That was so much fun. I mean, every day was a new adventure. So there were some days like we got ready for horse shows. We also went to horse shows. We had to braid the night before because we'd leave first thing in the morning. So, I mean, and it didn't really matter. I mean, there was just the five of us, we thought running the show.
Of course. At that age,
And
you feel like you're the most important thing on the planet, and that you know
we
it
were.
all. Yeah.
And we knew all of it. It was great. It was so much fun. And to have multiple horses to ride, I got this little pony I could ride. And then I also got to ride a 17 3-hand. He was gelded late, FEI horse, So it was so much fun. So much fun to be surrounded by horses. And there were no parents. So that was the best
That's the
part.
best part. Absolutely, absolutely. The best part for any kid is to be turned loose in a barn with no personal parental supervision.
And like-minded people. I mean, it's great to make, the friendships and to stay in touch. And we all love to work. There weren't any slackers. We were all helping each other, whether it was cleaning tack or washing foals or braiding. It was a blast.
So let's talk a little bit about the expectations on you coming in your first week. Obviously, the idea of a working student is you have some horse knowledge to some degree, but you're there to learn. So
Hmm.
I obviously, your goal is there to learn riding skills, to be taught, but did you get more educational? I mean, it sounds like Hilda's Place, obviously very, very large operation from training, riding, the whole breeding operation. So like, what was discussed as far as your expectation? Obviously you did everything, and was it said when you come you're going to be doing everything? And
You know, I don't remember really. I mean, that was 20 years ago. However, I do recall I think most people come in with unrealistic expectations. I also don't think trainers really communicate that well. And that's just all of us. I'm generalizing, myself included, because now in hindsight, like looking in from a trainer, we're chasing our tails. There's so much to do. And I think it's until you actually get in, until you're actually a working student, you don't understand all the things it takes to run a farm. And so I think we all come in thinking, we get to ride horses and sit pretty on a horse and look good. And we don't understand all of the things that we do to make that farm run. And that's really, I think, the largest value of being a working student, because then you get to see behind the scenes what trainers do, what instructors do, what it takes to run a farm, and it's a lot.
So I'm assuming somebody else probably was in charge of, like, so how in her barn, how did she who was in charge of making like the feeding decisions on what each horse was fed?
I think that was Hilda. We didn't feed the horses, as far as I remember. There was a staff that cleaned the stalls and fed the horses. We tacked up the horses, we cleaned the tack, and we worked the horses, is what we did.
So you were not necessarily expected to clean stalls. Now I understand, I know when I was a working student, I was expected to help feed, help turn out, help turn in, clean stalls, all that good stuff. So I think, it very much varies.
As a working student, I've never cleaned stalls. That's never been a part of mine, a previous experience. My experiences have been sometimes feeding, tacking up, bathing, maybe braiding, and riding. So that's only been my experience in trade for lessons and a place to live.
Absolutely, absolutely. So was it did you get one or more daily lessons? I mean, how many lessons a week or a day, or how did that work out?
Well,
I know it varies. It totally depends on the negotiation, obviously, with the farm. But let's talk about your first experience in California, and then we'll go to Temple.
I think I've been lucky, with the working student positions I've had. I think Hilda was very generous. Also, the other unique thing is working students were lunging working students. So if I had a seat problem, we would actually lunge each other in the back arena, not in front of Hilda. Go, she'd put us to work. And then, but I think it was one daily lesson probably was the talked about amount. But I remember riding 3 horses a day, and also getting a lunge lesson. So, also, yeah.
You got a lot of time in the saddle, which is really nice.
Yeah, I think Hilda was extremely generous for me.
So did she have like an assistant trainer that you were also worked with, or at all? Or because I know a lot of trainers will have an assistant with them if they have a really big barn, and it does sound like she had an enormous barn.
She did. I think all of my lessons, for the most part, were given to me by Hilda. There was, I guess you could call her barn manager, a girl that I live with. She working student. I don't remember her title, but you could call her assistant. She did a lot for Hilda, and she also ran all of us. She was the leader of all of us. So whenever something came up, I was always asking, "What do I do? Where do I go? What do So I think she was running the show. I don't remember her teaching. I mean, we taught each other lessons, but I think Hilda is the one who taught the lessons and rode the horses in training.
Busy day for her as well, then.
That woman works really hard, and she still does to this day. You know, she is a very hardworking individual.
Yeah. So what about, I guess same question for is, your time at Temple Farms.
So at Temple Farms, oh, the other thing is we work 6 days a week, and we usually only have one day off. That is pretty normal, I think. So at Temple Farms, like I said, I brought my own horse, and Temple Farms was unique because they have the Lipizans, and so at the time that I was there, I worked with George Williams, and it was in the last 4 or 5 years that he was there. And during that time, some of the Spanish riding school riders were still there, and their horses that they trained were still there. And so I feel very fortunate to have been at Temple Farms during that time, to watch them ride, to be able to ride the horses that they trained. To see a long lining horse, the ears above the ground. And so with them, it was the same. So it was tacking them up. So we always work the Lipizans first. We were usually done by 10 or 11. And
let me ask real quick, because you talked about in California, but you didn't talk about how many working students were with you at Temple.
Oof. Okay. So at the time that I was there, there were multiple trainers, and I would say there were 5 to 6 trainers. And so for George, there were 2 working students for him. And I think for the other trainers, they had maybe 1 working student, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, at least 6 to 7 working students. So there was a lot. It was, again, another very large operation. I don't know how many Lipizans they had, maybe 40 to 50 during that time. That was the late 90s when it was very large. And then they also have an annex that had 60 horses. So that's where the other trainers had training horses.
In the annex? Gosh, I don't remember it being that big. I mean, I know it was big, but 60 seems huge. Wow.
I know. I could be wrong. Like I said, I was 16, 17, 18. 19 during that time. But I do remember.
I remember it's a big annex, but I was like, I'm trying to remember, like when you walked in and turned down one of the aisles, like how many stalls were on each aisleway? Like,
and there's at least like 3 wings on each side. So I'm pretty sure in each aisle had 10, I think. It was a lot. And so that's where my horse was kept. And then horses that were in training. So like the afternoon, at least for George, was usually lessons with everyone. And so sometimes I was very lucky enough to have a lesson on a Lipizan. Also, the working students, I still remember to this day, the other working student that I work with was lunging me. And actually, George was holding the lunge line. I was on, Birdie was the stallion's name. And the working student had the whip. And so he'd crack the whip. So, George would ask, like, I'm not holding on. My legs are not in stirrups, doing some arm circles, lifting my legs. And Phil would crack the whip right at that moment. So I remember during that time also being lunged by other working students, which I don't know if that's healthy. At Temple Farms.
A little bit anyway. Payback time, maybe?
Yeah, that was definite payback time. And that you really learned, like, it was more casual, I think, at Hilda's. Whereas at Temple Farms, they were putting on performances every Wednesday and Sunday, and to be a part of the performance. And so, it's really putting on a presentation, which behind the scenes, you're running around crazy. And then by the end, you have to hurry everything up, clean all the tag, get the horses in the stalls. And then the public comes in and walks down the aisle and looks at all the horses. So I really learned how to hurry or hustle in that environment. And it was great to see, how trainers dealt with clients and manage, their time. I think that's such a valuable lesson that you can't put a price on all of that.
Oh, absolutely. So absolutely. Because so Hilda's obviously, it was very much seeing how her program as a single trainer, everything she ran, but at Temple, you got to witness, first of all, how Temple Farms ran their farm and their performances. And then under that as well, all the various trainers that were there. You mentioned George. Was Alf still there?
Alf was still there. Carl was there. Mike Garrels was there. Ted Goad, who is still there. I love Ted Goad. Was there. And so that's a lot of personalities together, and watching how that all, and they all were divided. They each had their own program and their own horses. However, George was the director of training. And so it's interesting, they would have a meeting every morning at 7:30. We would all go in and have a meeting, which I wish I could implement more into my training program, because it's it's go, 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 go. And so I try to always think of those times and think about what worked, and I think that's so helpful with the meeting. But then again, with all the personalities, so having those two programs, there was drama, you can say. And so seeing how that all worked together, and people wanted to be a part of the performances and then have certain spots, and you know so it was interesting to see how all that came together.
And so you had the in-house trainers. You had 4, 5, 6, 7 of them at one time, but wasn't it true also that, and they had not only their working students there, but they had clients there who were just boarders at Temple,
Hmm.
right, in the
Hmm.
annex
Yep.
portion, as you mentioned. So
Yep.
a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were also professionals, were they not? Or was that a smaller number?
I think that was a smaller number. I think a majority of them were adult amateurs.
Okay.
For the most, I mean, there were professionals, but I think for the most part, there were a lot of adult amateurs.
Yeah. So that had to have been a lot to going on as far as trainers working together, working students. I mean, so it sounds like you were assigned, not, you weren't just working for Temple. It sounds like you were kind of assigned as a particular trainer.
Well, I came to work with George. So I was taking lessons with George, and that he had offered me an opportunity to be a working student. I also picked my college so that way I could continue working with him. I learned a ton from him. And so, yeah, I only worked for George, but I also was able to observe all of these other trainers and how they handled their training, how they handled their working students, how they handled their clients. I think we miss the value in that as interns or working students, or, like, I can think back to that time and go, oh my gosh, now I understand why they did what they did. And a lot of times I run my barn similar because now I understand why they did what they did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember from being down in that area at the same time you were, and being neighbors with Temple Farms, and kind of getting to know everybody there. So, George was a director. You said Carl was still there. So, what was
Hmm.
Carl's role? And then, I know Temple had, its crew of riders, and these were the main riders who were training the stallions and riding them in the exhibitions, right? Am I correct?
Hmm.
So, like, what was Carl's role at that time? Because I know he was kind of, heading out at that
He,
point.
yeah, he was retiring at that time. So he was still riding horses. He was still coaching riders. He had students, or helping some of the other with the airs
Hmm.
above the ground. So that was his role,
Yeah. So, like, how did
training
they?
horses.
How did they? Because you talked about, you guys, the working students worked with certain lipizans, but how did Temple schedule it? Like you mentioned, George. When George was director, they'd meet at 7 or 7:30 or whatever and have their meeting, and then did they all kind of work together on
Hmm.
stuff for the performances, and that got done
In the
before
morning. Yeah.
And
So
was this when you guys would be as working students, like tacking their horses
yeah.
up and all that?
Yep. So we would tack the horses up and they would be riding, or we would be riding some of the young stallions, and they would work on the performance or working on training, working on the airs because it's a two-man team. And so usually the arenas, the indoor, outdoor was closed to the boarders until 10 or 11. And so the Lipizans would be worked in the morning before, during that time, and then we would move over to the annex. And remember, we were tacking up and untacking as well as turning horses out. That's a lot of horses. The horses usually only got 45 minutes, maybe sometimes 20, of turnout. And there at that time, there were only 4 turnouts for the annex horses, and there were 3 for the Lipizans.
Right.
So that's not a lot of, and they were tiny.
Yep.
And we had to be first thing in the morning turning them out, and getting the horses ready.
Did you have a schedule on who went out? Like, was there a very written in stone? These first go out, and these, and then these followed by these, or was it changing all the time?
It was okay. So this is great because I have labels all over my barn, and this is the reason I have labels all over my barn, because working students don't stay, clients don't stay, and so they're changing all the time. And so when I was a working student, it's trial by fire. They don't prep you, they don't help you. You ask dumb questions, you get shot. So, and that is not a joke. And like, you at Temple, you have no idea whose bridle goes on what. At my barn, there are lockers for each individual horse and client, and their bridles are in there, their saddles are in there for a reason. Because at Temple, there was a tiny little door that you opened, and there were a million saddles. And I remember the working student I work with, he was like, okay, these are 3 of George's saddles. And you're like, okay, but he has like 10 horses. What do we do here? And he'd be like, well, this is his favorite saddle. This is his favorite horse. And you better learn quick who your trainer likes and doesn't like and what saddle, because when you give him the horse and he doesn't like it, you're going to have to change it, or he gives you this look of disdain. And let me tell you, you have to guess. Like, there is no instructions. No one helps you that first week. You just run, and you're always late, and you're always, always wrong. That's it.
And every saddle had a grab strap, not because the horse is bucked or reared, because that was how you threw them over your shoulder and you ran from the Lipizans to the annex and from the annex back to the Lipizans.
And the tack couldn't be on the ground. And do you think we had a tack up area? No, we tacked them up in the stall. You hung the saddle on the hook away. And if you forgot, I mean, you bring everything with you. Like, it was horrible. It was horrible. And of course, they set you up for failure every single time, every time. So I thought of that experience. My working students get the luxury of having labels. Each horse has their own brushes. So like, we had a brush box that we carried around to each horse. They all shared the same brushes. You just grabbed wraps, in hopes that you did it all right. And, and you fitted the horse right. And usually you were wrong. You're always wrong. You're a working student. You're wrong. And then you want to make sure too, if you have, so I had 2 very different experiences. My first experience, like, we truly worked as a team. My second experience at Temple Farms, we were not a team. By the end of week 2, the other working student was not cleaning any tack. He was getting to ride all the horses. And basically, I was a schlep. So I came up to George and I was like, hey, George, am I supposed to be cleaning all the tack here? Do I, are we supposed to share? Like, what's going on here? Well, that changed after a while. But, it wasn't a cohesive environment at Temple Farms, because actually, they didn't allow women in the arena for quite some time. And so, it was
Spanish riding school, I think, correct?
Yeah. And so it was the ones that advanced were the men, just plain and simple. And of course, the other working student I work with was a man. So you do have those experiences, and either you're going to get schlepped to the ground or you're going to rise up and push back a little bit. And I don't think that's a bad experience. I think it's a great experience. Yeah.
Life is not given to you sugar coated and with sweetener and whatever. It's hard. It's you get knocked down, you get up again. Things aren't given to you for most people. You know, some people are very fortunate. Obviously, I'm more fortunate than others, but yeah, you know, the working student situation is for, in my opinion, those of us who were not able to have the luxury of being the client that pays for everything and just shows up and goes. It's, you know, I very much worked my butt off as a kid to have any time with horses because my parents really couldn't afford it. So they afforded me one lesson a week with the after school program, and then regretted it for the rest of their lives. Because I never, ever got rid of that, you know, love.
That bug.
So, you know, still regretting it to this day as I laugh. But, you know, I mean, but like, you know, I had to, if I wanted anything beyond that, I had to find a way to work for it. And so, you know, finding job, babysitting, mowing lawns, shoveling snow in the winter. I got a paper route, anything I could do to make a buck, to be able to afford something more. So,
yeah.
So, you know, the working student position, you know, tends to be people who are trying to really make it in the horse world, but just cannot afford to pay their own way.
That, or you're trying to become a professional, or seeing if this is the life for you. I think all of those things. Sometimes people just think it's fun. You know, they do it as a break before they go on. To college.
I know people who have you know, wanted to do a career change and, you know, quit their job and spent, you know, 6 months, a year and a half as a working student before resuming their career, either in the discipline they were in or making that full change to a new direction in their career. And they wanted that time to, you know, work hard, but also just step away from their normal lifestyle. And so, yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, I think it's very rewarding. I mean, I think of all the things that I learned as a working student in both places, and then I also later as a professional, I actually have been a working student again. I wanted to compete in Florida, and I had already had a barn, and I went to Florida for I don't know how long, a couple of months. And I was a working student there because I couldn't afford the cost of living and the cost of training. And actually, in that one, I basically worked for the camper I lived in, and that was really hard. That was a very hard experience for me because the trainer didn't work the client's horses. And so, you know, and to watch behind the scenes, you know, what was actually happening. And then the clients would come 2 weeks later, oh, this is so great. And then the horses actually weren't ever worked. And, you know, that goes to an ethics thing. You know, I'm there working for someone, and as a trainer, I know, you know, you're getting money to pay, you know, and payment to work the horses, and the horses aren't being worked. And do you say something, you know, like, what do you do? So it was interesting to see what other trainers do and how they manage their barn and what they don't do. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. And then the other opportunity that I had, I went to the West Coast a couple of years ago, and I wanted to compete in some CDIs. And again, I called up my friend and asked if I could come and do a trade that I could, and I loved it. I love being a groom, and I grew, and it was a great break for me. I was really glad I took it because it was good to get away from my barn, and it was for 6 weeks. I was a working student, and so I had a place to live, and they were totally cool with me going down and competing in the CDIs, and I didn't get lessons. I just got a place for my horse and myself to stay. And then they also saw I could ride. So then all of a sudden I got a lot more horses. But I was happy not riding horses and just grooming for someone else. I had a total blast. And then I was able to just spend time with my horses and have a break and only think about me. So I'm grateful for those people because I got to see how they ran their farm. I thought they did a great job and how they sold horses. And so it was a great experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you've talked a little bit about, well, a lot about your experience as a working student, and you've kind of brushed on yourself as a trainer who has had working students or has working students. So, what have you taken from your 2 or 3 experiences, 4 experiences as a working student, and what have you incorporated into what you do, and what have you said, I am not doing this and we're not going to do it that way? What have you changed?
Um, I think it's close to about the same. I mean, except mine get paid. Mine also, I feel like mine have it easier. They have cushier hours. I'm nicer than some of the, places I've been. They get to ride really great horses, but I got to ride really great horses at Temple and Hilda's. I put labels. I walk them through the barn. I do feel like it's easier at my farm.
Mm-hmm.
Less yelling.
You're not running 60 horses through. So that's a little
no,
different.
no, I mean, we have a 24 stall barn. At most, I've had 4 working students at a time. Two is the best number. They don't have to clean stalls. I want them to focus on the horses and working on the horses. And
So
it's
what do they do? So do they clean? You said they don't, I'm sorry, they don't clean, but do they help feed? They do turn in, turn out, probably,
yep.
right?
So
Tack
mine
up.
feed morning and night, also at lunch. In the morning, it's run like Temple Farms actually. So in the morning is training horses. And so I'm riding horses, and then I also like to teach them lessons first. Some days that works, some days it doesn't. And then from like noon to 7, I'm teaching lessons. So they're turning horses in and out, putting horses on the TheraPlate, wrapping horses, holding horses, helping new clients. There's other side jobs, filling water tanks, filling hay hut, dusting, um, sweeping the tack room, cleaning out buckets, those kinds of things they do in the afternoon. And then they're done usually around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So that's pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. I think I would get there by 7. So I was a working student in an eventing barn. So slightly different because they do the 3 disciplines, but we won't get into that.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it was, I would get there by 7. We would feed and do turnout together because this was a smaller barn. It was like 13 stalls. So
Mhm.
one trainer, with her horses and clients and things. So, and then while she would do whatever she was doing, riding, teaching, all that, I actually cleaned stalls. So,
Okay.
but I also helped with vet and farrier, so she could keep working and teaching or whatever. I would often fetch horses for the farrier hold if needed, all that jazz. So
Mhm.
a little different. And I
Yeah.
also actually learned on that job a lot about maintaining horse fencing, because I would often go out and help them and learned how to fix fence, things like that. I learned how to drive a tractor on there. I learned how to, use a manure spreader. So I learned a lot about like farm equipment, which I found quite helpful, obviously. Learned
Mhm.
a lot more in subsequent later in life with other opportunities. But, I definitely had a lot of, introductions to things. Maybe I wouldn't get if I had gone down to like Temple or something, like learning how to drive a tractor and hook up a manure spreader and a PTO and how the manure spreader worked and all that garbage. uh,
Mhm.
some people might not find that useful, but I certainly did later in life. I went, as we were talking earlier, when you were down at Temple, I was actually managing a barn that was about a 10-minute drive from Temple. It was 42 stalls, and it was everything I had learned all came back, because I went from working student to eventually becoming like the barn manager. So,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
hello, my good friend Hashna Diary. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you, Hashna. Everybody check out Hashna's channel, Hashna Diary. She's monetized channel and a wonderful, wonderful gal. So thank you, Hashna. I appreciate you coming in. Um, so yeah, so I took those skills, but I'm so glad I had that kind of more broader experience, because when I became a barn manager of a bigger barn, I needed to know all that. I needed to know
Mhm.
so much, because I was in charge of the staff, they were doing the cleaning and everything, but it was also, we were, making recommendations on the equipment we needed, on what needed repairs, what we needed to get rid of and get new, blah, blah, blah. So a little different, I think I had a little different experience, but in the end, you know, it was rewarding for sure. And then I also went from there. You talked about going to Florida. I went not as a working student, but I went with a jumper rider, a show jumper, and was basically her groom for the winter.
Mhm.
So very similar.
Fun.
It was a lot of fun, a lot of work, very similar work. 6 hours a day, dawn to dusk. And it was always at a horse show grounds and stuff. But very similar idea to the idea of the working student, but I was
Mhm.
just grooming. So, because it kind of sounds like as a working student, you're really a groom for your trainer,
I
essentially,
think so. Yeah.
in exchange for, the
Lesson.
lessons.
A lesson.
So,
Yeah, and some like the barn I was at over the winter, they had a working student, and really she didn't really ride. So each working student position is totally different. And so if they stay like a year, then she gets to start riding horses. So, you know, every working student is a little bit different, and it's best to communicate and understand what the expectations are.
absolutely. Yeah, I would, I think it's really important to, if you're going in, or if you have a child, if you're a parent right now watching this, who's got maybe a teenager who wants to spend a summer as a working student, or maybe some older teenager who wants to take a year off of from high school, between high school and college, maybe is considering going professional, wants to be a working student. I think definitely, the more questions and the better the communication. Because I don't, people always talk about communication, and it always sounds wonderful, but I think that's always kind of the last thing that happens, because in a professional horse industry, as you mentioned earlier several times, Megan, it's just go, 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 go. It's just get stuff
Yeah.
done. There's just never enough time. So, um, it might be good for a parent, or somebody who's considering being a working student to sit out, like, before you even go and talk to these people, and consider it, write out your most important questions and take it with you, because thank you, Hashna, very much. I mean, I think I know I myself, when I went into a couple of these places, you kind of get a little starstruck and excited, and it's more excitement than anything is, oh my God, I can't wait. I hope to gosh, I land this, and I hope I can get this job. I really want to, be in this barn. And you kind of like, everything goes out the window, and
Yeah.
you all your questions. And, especially, the younger you are. Because I remember my introduction to horses, and I was so excited. I don't think I could have even like thought of like a million other questions other than when I was there and everything was in front of me, but yeah. So
Yeah, I don't think you understand until you really are in it and how much work it is. Also, lately, I think because of safe sport, I'm not that interested in taking individuals that are under 18. You know,
yeah, so that's a tough conversation, but that's one we should have. So for those who maybe are not understanding what safe sport is, they you should it's the our national governing body for the equestrian sport is United States Equestrian. So you go on their website, usef.org, click into safe sport and learn about that. It's basically what has come out of some federal legislation that has been enacted to protect athletes in all the Olympic discipline sports. And what it came about from, uh, in my opinion, I think, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but this really stemmed from the sexual abuse in the gymnastics world.
I think so.
And I
Yeah.
think it's now it's covering all Olympic sports, Olympic disciplines, and whatever their national governing body is. Obviously for the equestrian world, again, I said it's the United States Equestrian. For the gymnastic world, it's going to be something different. For the bobsled world, it's going to be something different. So, but you can read up on that. Is very important for young people and parents to read up and understand that, as well as obviously professionals in the horse industry. And I agree, it has made it very difficult, I think, for someone under the age of 18 to probably be able to find a working student position maybe in a summer, because it's just in my opinion, and I'm no longer a professional. I don't manage, I'm only manage my own barn, but I don't run a training barn. I'm not a barn manager in that regard. It's my own private barn. So um, it's scary. Uh,
Well, and not only that, so you have the safe sport aspect, but you also have when parents drop their children off, you are now fully responsible for their child.
yeah,
And so if their child gets hurt, and a lot of times I've had parents drop their kids off, and I'm like a daycare. And I've had this happen in the past, and I'm not getting paid to be the daycare. I've had the parents literally drop their child off from sun up to sundown, and sometimes even stay. And in hindsight, I'm like, wow, this wasn't very smart on anyone's part. And so that's something you have to consider, and which is really sad because I think about, being 15 and meeting those people, and it was just a great experience. And now I don't want to offer that for multiple reasons: liability. Also, I don't just on the safe sport, 40 years down the line, if someone has a grudge against me, I don't want it. And that's just the reality of it. And I don't want to offer it. I would rather offer it to adults or someone, that's 18. Um, you know,
absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned, so this is something that parents need to understand, is that when you're paying for your child to take a lesson, it doesn't mean you're dumping your kid for the day, and that it's, as you said, it's not daycare. And I have to say, my introduction, as I have mentioned, to the horse world was it started with an after school program. We got picked up at school on a bus. We got bused to the farm. We all rode, and then we got bused back. And I took that and I morphed that into that particular riding academy had a once a weekend, a Saturday riding program. And they actually ran their bus. They picked up at a couple locations and took us all in the morning, took us all up to the farm. We were there all day and we got dropped back at night. And my parents must have freaking loved it, because they
yeah,
got rid of me for an entire day for less than $20. And
yeah,
it was probably $15 because they had to ship me off with a little bit of money to eat something and drink something, and I can't even remember. I probably packed a lunch or something, but I mean, I think they must have just loved it. Like they were rid of me all day and I
Mm,
came back home happy and tired, you know,
yeah.
filthy, absolutely filthy because we, you know, got into the dirt and I mean, everything, but you know, it doesn't work like that anymore.
No, well, and and
Not in
I have had parents drop their kids off with no lunch, and they're there for hours, and I'm like, this is really silly. But sometimes you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, just the simple reality of running a farm and when you can't get help. And so that's something to also think about. Like in my later working student gigs, because when you're younger, you'll get on any horse, right? And so my later ones, one of the situations presented that someone quit, and so then there were all these horses to ride, and like I said, I was there to compete in CDIs. I wasn't interested in riding other people's naughty training horses, and so I said no. And that's a part of growing up and maturing and becoming a working student. I had only came there for um, grooming. I wanted a break.
right.
So, you know,
Absolutely.
that that's something, but on the flip side, you're getting someone's kid to come and work for you, but you got to be careful with that, and think about that. So, which is great for parents and it's great for, a barn owner, but what if they get hurt? What if they don't work? I mean, so I personally prefer to hire professional help, and older rather than the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, you know, unfortunate. I think I was very fortunate to stumble upon some of the opportunities, and I know I missed out on a lot of opportunities as well. Which everybody you do, you don't win them all, but yeah, now unfortunately, you know, with the court system and the liability system the way it is with safe sport, it's definitely a different world.
Yep.
For sure. So you brought up a good point. You mentioned at the beginning of this when you went as a younger teenager, you went out to California. Your parents had to pay to have you to pay them to take you as a worker. Um,
Hmm.
and how did it work at Temple?
I think Temple, you got paid roughly around like $400. You got a cabin to live in, but I had a horse in for boarding, which was like $800 a month.
Yeah. So
So the reality of it is, if you don't have parents to help you, which I was very fortunate to have parents help me, how do you do it? And so basically, with both cases, I had to work to be a working student. And mine actually get paid and have a place to live. So that's a little bit different. And they also get usually a lesson a day.
So when you went to California, you were able to arrange that you lived with, you said the barn manager's grandparents. Was that something that, you had to like pay room and board or
Yeah, I also had to pay them for that. Well, my parents did because I was 15. So not only did Hilda get paid for me to work, the people I live with I got paid for me to live with them. And, they had the bar manager drive me back and forth, and, as you should. But today, I don't think people pay to be working students.
yeah,
So
that's
either
probably
I
not.
wasn't very smart, or I don't know, the times are changing.
Yeah, probably times are changing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Well, and not everybody can provide housing for a working student. It's
Hmm.
uh, when I was professionally managing that barn down near Temple, we had housing on the farm. We had several residences on the farm, but it was really for the employees. The trainers that were there were not actually employed by the farm. They were
Hmm.
of in the sense as a boarder as well. We had 2 trainers in the barn. It was 2 wings of the barn. They each had a wing. And so we didn't deal with their working students or grooms or whatever they chose to have. But we did have residences on the farm for this, members of the staff, which was really nice. And, you just mentioned Temple had a couple cabins for their
Mhm.
Temple is first of all, an enormous property holding throughout the greater Gurnee area. They had many residences, not necessarily right on the farm, what most people think of as the farm grounds, which is where the Lipizans are. But not everybody is able to provide housing for
Right.
and so it's very nice you're able to provide housing for a working student, because that often is difficult. When I went down there to manage, there was nothing open on the farm for me to live. And so, I mean, we had me in a hotel for a while. As we were looking around for a rental property, I have to say I was very fortunate that my employers, agreed to house me, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. I mean, we were searched for quite a while to try to find a rental property for me. And then it actually worked out that somebody on the property, one of the employees quit, and I was going to be able to take over that residence.
Mhm.
So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But we tried Temple to see if they had anything, because they actually
Mhm.
do have a lot of residential properties around on the farmlands. So, we inquired there to see if they had anything that was empty, available to rent.
Mhm.
They didn't. I mean, we looked all over Paddock Lake. I mean, everywhere. So, um, yeah, your working students are very lucky that they're right there.
Yeah.
Especially, it's funny to say it, but not everybody has access to a car that can just has a car.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might go, "What do you mean?" But it's a luxury to have a car to take with you to do something like this. You mentioned when you were in California, you probably didn't have a driver's license. Were you 15?
I was 15, so I didn't have a driver's license. So that's another reason I live with the grandparents, as well as the working student, and she drove me back and forth every day. So basically, and so just imagine that, like she in herself, her job now has this kid following her all over. And luckily, she liked me. But I think I was only 1 year younger than her. And so that's also probably a reason we got along. And this was 20 years ago. Different mindset, different work ethic,
Yeah.
and like I said, it was a lot of fun, and it would be great to provide that to all kids. But being a professional now and having people come work for me, wow. Like some people, they have no idea what work is or pride in their work, just throwing other people's equipment around, not showing up on time. I have
Not showing up.
crazy, yeah, not showing up, saying they're going to show up. Oh gosh, I had, one write a text message about me, and it was supposed to be sent to her mom, and I actually got it. I mean, just unreal things, but so I'm always floored when these things happen. I actually had some working students not even want to leave, but they didn't want to work. That was insane. And they had actually brought in like animals in the middle of the night, like a tarantula and a snake. And what else? In our house, we had to call the police to ask them to leave. Like unreal things. So, yeah, for a time, I didn't want to have any working students.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
That's pretty rough to have that kind of situation, where you might have to evict somebody. That's
Mhm.
that's hard. So yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's talk about, like, what do you offer your working students? Obviously, they come in. We've kind of talked about what, maybe we haven't. What do they do for you? We've kind of touched on it, but let's go through that again. They help feed.
They feed, they
Okay.
tack and untack, they cold hose,
Turnout.
churn out. They have to help clients when clients come, new clients, old clients. Um,
Do they help with like the farrier and the vet if needed?
no, I mainly deal with the vet and the farrier. They don't. Um, and then like side jobs, there's a whole list of side jobs for the
Dusting,
afternoon.
cleaning, brooming, all
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
sweeping, all of that.
Deep cleaning,
Deep
tack
cleaning.
cleaning. Do you have them cleaning tack every day?
They have to clean tack every day.
Yeah.
Yep, and laundry, all of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do they help? Let's see. Let's talk about, well, like I mentioned, when my experience in an inventing barn, I learned, I had to do, fence repairs. I think we've
They
met
have,
dumping and scrubbing water buckets, dumping and scrubbing water tanks,
yep,
all
putting up hay. They don't have to clean stalls. Um, clipping horses,
braiding,
fencing.
braiding for your, do they help braid for like the sale horses?
They learn how to braid. They learn how to put wraps on. Yep.
All that good stuff.
Mhm.
So, do you get into the finer details? I'm sure you do, but we'll bring it up. A lot of people come in, obviously, maybe being a training level or first level rider, and as they advance, you kind of go from a single snaffle bridle to learning how to ride in a double. So, do you spend time to kind of explain to them how the fitting of a double and the fitting of the bits and all that, or is that
Mhm.
just something that kind of sort of happens?
Yeah. Yeah, they have to learn, they have to learn how to clean a bridle, put together a bridle, ride in a snaffle, ride in a double, lunge a horse, learn how to lunge a horse, properly lunge a rider on a horse. Teach people. They have to learn all of that if they stay long enough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's competency levels that they need to hit, obviously, to be able to do some of that stuff. Now, do they help you with things like pasture mowing, arena dragging, watering in the arena? What all do they kind of help with?
No, just what we talked about. I want them caring for the horses. Some have known how to take out the tractor, but I have a really good stall cleaner right now who can take out the tractor. Some want to learn, some don't. So if they want to learn, I don't really want them dragging the arena because I have a nice arena and I used to have my other arena and I had people running into the wall and we have a nice set of mirrors that I really don't want hit. So no.
Yeah,
Um,
that's understandable.
yeah, and
At the
you
end of the
know,
day, yeah, if you drive the tractor through the end of the arena wall, that's on you. It's your
yeah,
choice and it's your bill to pay, but
yeah, and I actually had a student run the tractor into the wall, into the barn itself. So I kind of am not motivated to teach anybody how to drive things. I had a friend drive through my hay shed. Again, I'm not really motivated teaching anyone how to drive a bobcat. The other thing is liability. You go back to liability that you have to think about.
absolutely.
If someone gets hurt, what are you going to do? So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So I try to keep it minimal, simple, so no one gets hurt.
Absolutely. So, what are your no? You mentioned before your schedule. You have your training horses in the morning, and then you mentioned so your working students are part of that morning schedule. They get their lessons
Yep.
morning as well, or right or earlier afternoon.
Well,
We first one
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
as
It
necessary.
depends on the day.
Yeah. So what do they get? You've kind of mentioned do some of them bring horses, some of them not? Like how does that work out?
Some of them bring horses. And if they bring a horse, they get lessons on their horse. If they don't bring a horse, they get lessons on my horses. They get an
They bring a
apartment
horse, so they occasionally get to ride some of your horses as well?
if they work. Yes.
Yeah.
If they don't, that's the other thing people don't really pay attention to if they actually put in the time and the effort they get to ride in horses. Otherwise, if they put in minimal work, I put in minimal work. So
Spilled all
how are
over
you doing
myself.
over there?
I sort of sprayed myself with my water. Oops. It's like, ooh. Yeah,
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 so
and that's a broader scale of, hey, people, the more you work, the better, results you get. But so, what about clinics? Ability to ride at clinics, going to horse shows. How do you work that out with the working students? What are their opportunities? And do they go with you, acting as a groom while you're gone? Do they stay back and care for the horses? A little bit of everything. How does that work out?
a little bit of everything. Also, like I said, I think I've only ever had one working student that I've paid for her to go to shows. That shows you how many people don't really work. I've had a few working students that I've paid for them to ride in the clinics that I host, and you'd be surprised how many working students don't even say thank you. So that's something to think about if you are thinking about being a working student and you get an opportunity. I've offered, that people can ride on horses that I've imported. At the end of the lesson, you should just say simple thank you, because when you don't, they don't get the opportunity again. And I don't even tell them, it's, a lot of times I do because I think they should know. But, you know, they forget that, that is a privilege. That truly is a privilege, because none of the people I've worked for ever have offered me any of those things.
Not only offered you a spot, but offered to pay the clinician.
Yeah,
I mean, that is
paid for
really
it.
extraordinary.
Yeah. So if they work hard, several of my students have had that opportunity that they get to ride my horse in a clinic, like Jeremy Steinberg, Kathleen Rain, Jennifer Cotillo, really good, Melanie Malkayak, who's a freestyle designer. So they get that. They also get an apartment to live in. We feed them a lot. My clients feed them a lot of food. A lot, a lot of food. And then what
Your
else?
your clients like to cook and bake and things, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
if
great.
I didn't ride and run and bike, I'd be 300 pounds. A really, really good food. And then they also I pay a small stipend. So yeah, so that they
And
get a lot.
they get an apartment, obviously, like heat and electricity and
A washer and dryer. No, they don't have to pay for any of that. They don't have to pay rent. They don't, so it's pretty good. It's pretty cushy.
they get internet.
They get internet
Nice. That's great.
and a TV. There's a refrigerator down there, microwave. So yeah, and their own closet. One room, I have to admit, is really nice. The other room was a dark room, so it's not so nice. But they don't have to pay rent. So yeah,
Is it
pretty,
mostly furnished, or how does that work?
it's fully furnished. Couch, bed, desk. Yeah.
Nice.
The dishes are in there. Dresser is in there. Yeah,
That's nice.
that is nice.
So that's awesome. So yeah, what about the horse showing thing? I think we kind of skipped a little bit of that. Do they, I know, some bring a horse, some don't. So, but how does that work for horse shows? You know, if they, if it's somebody who's looking to advance, and eventually, like you mentioned, you're hoping that your working students will learn how to teach and start teaching.
Yep.
Um, do they have opportunities to, let's say it's a working student who has a horse, they brought a horse into the barn with them. Are they able to try to get to a couple horse shows?
They are. What I usually do is do like a day show. So I don't take them with the whole group because someone does need to stay home.
Mhm.
And it helps if I have multiple. If I don't have multiple working students, then a day show is perfect. If I have multiple working students, then one can come with and groom and, compete their horse. Um, it just depends on what's going on. A lot of times, there haven't been a lot that work that hard. That's the other thing. So it just depends on, their work ethic, um, if those
Their length
opportunities are available.
their length of time with you, I would assume. You don't just jump in and 2 months into it start wanting to show. There's a lot to learn, right?
Yeah, there's a ton to learn. Yeah, and basically a year for sure, and then after that, yeah.
So what about like a working student who would come in and doesn't have a horse? You mentioned then the regular riding opportunities to ride whatever school horses or horses you might have. You mentioned if they're lucky, they might be able to ride some of your imported sale horses. Obviously, you've mentioned in previous videos you've got school horses obviously available. But would they, if they're there long enough, they're working hard, do they get given an opportunity to show like a school horse or
Yeah,
if possible?
yeah, of course.
Mhm. So very similar. I mean, they may not
Yeah,
have their own horse, but you would, if they're a hard worker, you would find a way to
yeah,
provide them that opportunity on a something you had available.
yeah. And like I said, for me, I think it's all individual, but for me, it's them putting in the time. If they're lazy, and most of the time I see them on the phone and they're not working, those opportunities aren't going to come up. But if
Absolutely.
you're working hard and putting in 110% and long days and they show interest in doing that, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because I can't speak for the other parts of the equestrian industry, but I know that sometimes is difficult for working students. They just don't get that opportunity. In it varies, obviously. So, so what else can we talk about? I mean, we're getting close to, we got, I would say maybe 15 minutes left. We'll cut this off at an hour and a half. So, we're at an hour and 16 minutes or so, but it's interesting hearing, the background. Yeah, obviously we're talking, your experience as a working student in dressage. I had, a little bit of an experience and it was an eventing barn, a little different experience. And I think, in other parts of the equestrian world, they're going to be very different experiences. But, it's fun to hear the stories. Do you look back at it and go, you know, it's mostly good memories? Obviously, everything isn't rosy. Life is not always rosy. There's a lot of bad things that happen in life and bad,
Oh,
I can
I
look
look,
back at my working career, my professional working career in the office environment as a bean counter and go, oh, there was some stuff that was really unpleasant. And I look back at it and I'm like, ugh. But, overall, I can't say I look back and I go, God, I wish I would have never done that. You know what I mean? Like held that job or,
I look back at all my working student positions, grateful. Like, I'm really grateful for the opportunities. I think I was really lucky. I also wish I stayed a working student. Um, I wish I knew what I know now as, a head trainer, a barn owner, a horse owner, managing a barn. And I think I would have been a professional working student. I
yeah,
would.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just depending on, who you work for, obviously. But yeah, I wouldn't own my own barn. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I get that. Hindsight is always 2020. I kind of think back to something, and I don't mean to bounce around a little, but one of the things we just got done speaking of is you've got like a little apartment type thing for your working students, and I mentioned earlier there are places where, and I've heard of this and never experienced it myself firsthand, and but I know of, throughout my equestrian career, I've seen it in other barns, other trainers, like they put their staff like they live in the barn like in a stall,
yeah, yeah,
or something along those lines. So, you know, I mean, sometimes it's really, I mentioned, like I said, I feel very fortunate when I was a barn manager, I got given like a house basically. It was a little itty bitty little 600 square foot tiny little thing, but I was thrilled. It was like my own house, and I felt very fortunate. Now that wasn't really a working student experience, and my working student experience, it was close enough to where I lived with my parents because I was very young at the time. I just drove every day, kind of like you were able to arrange a way to find housing out in California. And then when you were at Temple, was it the whole time you were working student at Temple, you were in a, what did you call them?
Cabin.
The cabins. Yeah.
Yeah. The first year I actually lived with George and Roberta for a while. I'm not sure how long. And then I moved into the farmhouse of Anita Adams. So she was a trainer there at that time. So I lived with her and her husband, I think upstairs, probably an attic of the farmhouse. And then I think the second year I was in a cabin. And then
were these arrangements you like really had to like work hard to find, or was it like, were they like, hey, Megan, we need to find you a place, and I hear Anita might have a room. You want me to talk to her? You know what I mean? Did they help you, or was this something that you and your parents had to like really work hard to find you somewhere to live?
Nope, they arranged it. Okay. I did not arrange it. That was
your employer?
George and Roberta. They arranged it. And then when I went to college down there, I was in the dorm room. So
okay.
Yeah.
You were living on campus at your college. Okay.
Yeah, so, and then I was able to ride every day.
And Temple Farms, I have to say, I'm sure a lot of people who may watch this are like, well, yeah, but I'm going to say it anyway. Temple Farms is renowned for their working student program. They have had a lot of people go through their barn over the decades who have gone on, such as yourself, to become professionals. Who were either they're maybe they weren't necessarily a working student, but I mean, there are a lot of them. I can think of a ton of people. Yeah.
Well, and
people, all kinds of.
During the time I was there, yeah, my roommates, all of they're professionals. It's so great to see them as professionals, to go to the horse shows. I mean, that's I think where the camaraderie is. Whereas like 20 years ago, I don't think there was a lot of camaraderie at the competitions, whereas there is now. I mean, we all grew up together, and it's so great to see them doing so well with their own businesses, and pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this horse, or I have this client moving down to the Chicago area. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is something I kind of wanted to point out, is it like, if you are a working student and somehow provided, your employer is able to either provide you or arrange a place for you to live, that's actually pretty extraordinary, because I've heard and read, I have to say, read in magazine articles, read in stories online, read on social media. It's not always that easy.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who have been working students for some very well-known professionals, still very well-known professionals, who like, yeah, you're sleeping in the barn in a stall with the horses, like on a cot, and like, you're not really, there's not a lot of privacy, and you're showering in the same, you might be lucky enough to have a shower in, you might be lucky enough to have a barn that has a shower in there that you can, shower in and out, but you're sharing that with the boarders and, whatever. Or you're probably, having to figure it out like in a wash stall situation. I mean, I've heard the whole gamut. So.
Wow. No, I've been very fortunate. And so as my working students, they have their own shower.
Yeah.
In the house.
I mean, I've heard it all. Like,
wow.
You kind of have to like shower, so to speak, in the wash stall. So it was like, you went in your stall, which, somehow they kind of rigged up for privacy with curtains or whatever. And they would say they would put on a bathing suit, and they would basically like in the hose and the wash stall, wash your hair, kind of scrub off in their bathing suit. Yeah, I mean, it can be very, and they didn't think anything of it because literally these people were working some of the most famous people in that particular equestrian sport. I mean, so it was like,
Okay.
to me, that seems a little crazy, but
Yeah.
there are worse things in the world. There are a lot of people. Yeah, at the same point in time, you have to take it in context that to be able to be working with horses is privilege. There are a lot of people who, are homeless.
It is, but I think too, be careful to not be taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I was saying about not riding the crazy horses, and
Don't get
you
yourself
have to,
killed.
exactly, so I think part of that process as a working student is finding your voice, and raising your standards. So I think you shouldn't be treated like a slave either,
Yeah.
So
But I have to
I
say,
think
when
that's,
I was young, I would get on anything because I thought I was invincible.
well,
So I
you
don't know if
have,
you could convince me to look at the naughty horses and go, I probably shouldn't get on them because they're really naughty and they're dangerous. I remember being young and dumb and looking at them and going, I can ride that.
well, yes, you have that part, but then you also have, you have your own room. So I think it's just whatever you're looking for,
Yeah, yeah,
you can find it.
yeah.
Cool.
But again, don't get taken advantage of under any. We'll say that in the whole circular gamut of life. Don't get taken
Yeah.
advantage of. Yeah, but enjoy the opportunity for sure. And I
Yeah.
don't know. Things have changed so much that now, like, to find a working student position, it's emailing, it's looking around on social media, posting in various social media groups or whatever. um, it was hard when I was a kid. There wasn't Facebook. So it wasn't like you could go into a Facebook group that's set up for working student positions, or you could go look on 150 different trainers Facebook pages to see if they're hiring. I mean, it was really hard. Like, I remember, I mean, it was a lot of word of mouth, and I mean, it was tough. So
Mhm.
in that regards, I think it's a lot easier for people to find opportunities. But at the same point in time, are you finding it really difficult to fill working student positions now? I mean, we've
Mm,
talked about, I hate to say it, kids, but people, because you can get older and younger working students. People don't want to work. Like, we've talked about, they
Yeah.
don't really want to work
I
because
I think it depends. There's like a flow of people, but I definitely think there's less people looking for a working student position for sure.
yeah. So it is. You think it was a lot of people looking and competing for working student positions maybe 20, 25 years ago, and
Oh
now
yeah,
it's challenging.
for sure. Yeah. No, I think for sure.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Just
I
work?
think our industry is declining.
Yeah, I can see that. So, um, what do you? I mean, there's obviously a lot of probably reasons for it, but what would be your top three or whatever number of reasons to why that might be true? Firstly, for me, I think it's cost, but
Yeah, I think it's cost. I think we're losing the middle class. And now that there's such a great divide, I think the work ethic is simply not there, for sure. And honestly, I think it's just those two things: the
yeah,
cost and people
sure.
don't want to work. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this on I think it was our last live stream. It was kind of where we just talked about all the different things, but we talked about, the cost of tack and stuff. And that's something that a working student needs to appreciate as well as, um, if they come in and, say into your barn and you're providing them a horse to ride, I mean, there is a substantial amount of money involved for you in having that schoolmaster available and the maintenance of that schoolmaster, but also like I said, we talked about this in our last live stream. The cost of just tack alone, saddle, quality bridle, the blankets, the halters, the all the various horse equipment. I mean, you start adding that up, it's like the cost of a used car.
I think the cost of the horse. I mean, just
obviously the cost of the
yeah.
horse, yeah.
I
And then
mean,
the
I think
as well. It's
for clients as well. You know, I think people see the cost of a lesson, and they like, whoa, but they don't factor in the cost of the horse, all of the equipment, the vet bills, the farrier bills, if you have massage, if you have acupuncture. And then if you're a trainer like myself, you have the mortgage, you have, you have the taxes,
the feed bill,
the electric, the gas bill, add it all in. $90 is like really cheap. That's why I said I would be a professional working student.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a really good conversation.
It's great.
The idea of, and to hear it from obviously, the dressage perspective versus others, and it would be fun. I wish I knew more people in other equestrian industries where I could really bring them in. And
oh yeah, that'd be fun to compare and see what their thoughts are, because maybe they would have a different perspective.
It might be worth going out on some social media and inviting, kind of poking a few people to see if they'd come in, because I think it would be fun to get another couple different trainers and really kind of discuss it.
So. Oh yeah, I've always wanted to get a trainer group together and have a bunch of trainers talk shop. I think it'd be great.
Having like a round table would be absolutely fun.
That'd be fun.
So we need to get, by popular demand, people have requested that your veterinarian and farrier come back, and I hope somehow we can make that happen. I realize they have very busy lives, and it is very difficult as parents of young children for them to both come in. But I don't want to waste their time, but it would be, I think, a lot of fun to have them back. People really seem to enjoy both of them and hearing what they had to say, and I certainly enjoyed having them on. I really enjoyed it as well. So we'll have to find more discussions.
Pick a topic, and I'll ask them.
Definitely. Sounds good. So we're kind of getting to the end here. We're at an hour and a half.
Right.
So this is where, again, I say thank you, Megan. And also, please take this time now to tell people how they can find you in the world. Social media, website, phone number, email, whatever you want. How do they find you, Megan? Please
check me out on my website, Lindinhof.com. I'm also on Facebook, Lindinhof Equine Sports Centrum. Check us out there. You can call or text me at 608-445-8531. If you want to email me, lindenhofllc@gmail.com. And then we're also on YouTube if you want to check out some videos, Lindinhof 1. So yeah, come check us out. Happy to help anyone.
See if I can type that on here. I'm having trouble with my computer. Lord knows I don't want to. Yeah, it's being weird. So I guess I'll make sure it's down below in the comment or in the description box. I think it might already be there, but obviously since you and I are using StreamYard, can't tell that right now. But I again appreciate you taking another evening during the week to attend our live stream, and we will. We'll see if we can get something on the books for next week. I don't know what's your horse show schedule. When's your next horse show, Megan?
End of the month. So yeah, I should have time next week.
Good deal.
All right. Cool.
Scheduled. So thank you again, lady. Appreciate it. And I will let you head out. So thank you.
Bye.
So thanks, everybody. Appreciate those of you who have stuck in and watched this. Again, I want to thank Megan. Lindinhof.com is her website. You can find her on Facebook at Lindinhof Equine Sports Centrum, as she mentioned. And again, thank you guys so much. Please give this video a thumbs up, especially if you're watching it. Appreciate those of you who are watching it with the ads. YouTube likes to, get their money so we can do this stuff for free. So thanks, everybody. Make sure you watch my channel. I will get something scheduled with Megan again for hopefully next week if it works out with our schedules, or the following week. And everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you guys on